The Vought SB2U Vindicator was a carrier-based dive bomber developed for the United States Navy in the 1930s, the first monoplane in this role. Obsolete at the outbreak of World War II, Vindicators still remained in service at the time of the Battle of Midway, but by 1943, all had been withdrawn to training units. It was known as the Chesapeake in Royal Navy service. Design and development. In 1934, the United States Navy issued a requirement for a new scout bomber for carrier use, and received proposals from 6 manufacturers. The specification was issued in 2 parts, one for a monoplane, and one for a biplane. Vought submitted designs in both categories, which would become the SB2U1 and SB3U1 respectively. The biplane was considered alongside the monoplane design as a hedge against the U.S. Navy's reluctance to pursue the modern configuration. The SB2U1 was of conventional low-wing monoplane configuration with a retractable conventional tailwheel landing gear, the pilot and tail gunner being seated in tandem under a long greenhouse-style canopy. The fuselage was of steel tube construction, covered with aluminum panels from the nose to the rear cockpit with a fabric-covered rear fuselage, while the folding cantilever wing was of all-metal construction. A Pratt & Whitney R1535 Twin Wasp Junior radial engine drove a 2-blade constant-speed propeller, which was intended to act as a dive brake during a dive bombing attack. A single 1,000-pound bomb could be carried on a swinging trapeze to allow it to clear the propeller in a steep dive, while further bombs could be carried under the wings to give a maximum bomb load of 1,500 pounds. The SB2U was evaluated against the Brewster XSB-A1, Curtiss XSB-C3, Great Lakes XB2G1, Grumman XSB-F1 and Northrop XBT-1. All but the Great Lakes and Grumman submissions were ordered into production. Designated XSB2U1. One prototype was ordered on 15 October 1934 and was delivered on 15 April 1936. Accepted for operational evaluation on 2 July 1936. The prototype XSB2U1, Buno 9725, crashed on 20 August 1936. Its successful completion of trials led to further orders. The SB2U was prominently featured in the 1941 film Dive Bomber. There were 260 examples of all Vindicator variants produced, and a single example is preserved at the National Museum of Naval Aviation at NAS, Pensacola. Operational history. U.S. Navy Vindicators served on the carriers Lexington, Saratoga, Ranger, and Wasp from December 1937 to September 1942. Air Group 9, destined for Essex, trained in Vindicators aboard the escort carrier Charger, but they transitioned to the Douglas SPD Dauntless before Essex joined the war. U.S. Marine Corps, VMSB 131 and VMSB 241 were the only 2 USMC squadrons that fielded the Marine-specific SB2U3 between March 1941 and September 1943. VMSB-241's Vindicators saw combat at the Battle of Midway in June 1942. Airmen with experience in more modern aircraft spoke disparagingly of SB2Us as vibrators or wind indicators in the later combat assignments. Captain Richard E. Fleming piloted a SB2U3 Vindicator in an attack on the Japanese cruiser Mikuma on 5 June 1942, for which he was posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor. French Navy based on the SB2U2. The V156F incorporated specific French equipment. Briefly after the deliveries started in July 1939, V156F crews were trained for carrier operations aboard the French carrier Bearn. But when the war broke out, the old carrier was declared too slow for operational service. As a result, V156F-equipped units escadrilles AB1 and AB3 were based ashore when the Battle of France started. AB1 sustained heavy losses while attacking bridges and German ground targets in northern France, while AB3 SV156Fs were briefly engaged against the Italians. By the time of the armistice, there were only a handful of remaining Voughts in French hands, and the type was phased out of service. Royal Navy. France had placed an order for a further 50 V156Fs in March 1940, with delivery planned from March 1941. Following the defeat of France, this order was taken over by the British government for use by the Royal Navy's Fleet Air Arm, who named the aircraft the Chesapeake. The British required several modifications to the Chesapeake, including the additional fuel tank fitted to the SB2U3, additional armor and heavier forward-firing armament, with 4 rifle-caliber machine guns replacing the single forward-firing Dun machine gun of the French aircraft. 14 Chesapeakes were used to equip a reformed 811 Naval Air Squadron on 14 July 1941. The squadron, whose crews referred to it as the Cheesecake, intended to use them for anti-submarine patrols, and they were earmarked for the escort carrier HMS Archer. By the end of October that year, it had been decided that the Chesapeakes were underpowered for the planned duties and would not be able to lift a sensible payload from the small escort carriers. Accordingly, they were withdrawn from 811 Squadron in November 1941 for use as training aircraft, and the unit was re-equipped with the biplane Fairey Swordfish variants. Single prototype powered by a 750 horsepower 1535-78 engine. Initial production version powered by an 825 horsepower 1535-96 engine, 54 built. Same as SB2U1 but with minor equipment changed, 58 built. Single prototype of the extended range version with twin floats, converted from the SB2U1. Similar to the SB2U2 but fitted with an 825 horsepower 1535-102 engine, crew armor and 2 0.5 inches guns, 57 built. Export version for the French Navy, 40 built. Export version similar to the SB2U3 and powered by a 750 horsepower 1535 SB4G engine for the British Royal Navy. Designated Chesapeake Mk.I. 50 built. The V156 company demonstrator was fitted with a more powerful Pratt & Whitney R1830 engine and redesignated V167. It remained a one-off. Operators: France, French Navy Aeronavale, United Kingdom Royal Navy Fleet Air Arm 768, Naval Air Squadron 770, Naval Air Squadron 771, Naval Air Squadron 772, Naval Air Squadron 776, Naval Air Squadron 778, Naval Air Squadron 781, Naval Air Squadron 784, Naval Air Squadron 786, Naval Air Squadron 811, Naval Air Squadron. United States Navy, United States Marine Corps. Survivors: Only one known survivor exists today. SB2U Vindicator, Bureau number 1383, is on display at the National Museum of Naval Aviation at NAS, Pensacola, Florida. Specifications. Data from General Characteristics. Crew 2, pilot and gunner. Length 34 feet 0 in. Wingspan 42 feet in. Height 10 feet 3 in. Wing area 305 feet squared. Empty weight 4,713 pounds. Loaded weight 6,379 pounds. Max takeoff weight 7,332 pounds. Power plant 1 times Pratt & Amp Whitney R1535-96 Twin Wasp Junior radial engine 825 horsepower. Performance maximum speed 251 miles per hour. Range 630 miles. Service ceiling 27,500 feet. Rate of climb 1,340 feet per minute. Wing loading 21 pounds feet squared. Power mass 0.13 horsepower pound. Armament guns 1 times forward firing 0.30 in M1919 Browning machine gun in starboard wing M2 Browning machine gun in SB2U 1 times 30 in machine gun in flexible mount for tail gunner in SB2U Bombs 1 times 1,000 pounds a 500 pounds bomb.